Do you struggle with hiring? Has this been an age-old issue with your business and getting the right people on the bus? Today we're going to talk about how we can fix this once and for all. Okay, so you've made a bad hire. It happens, but how do we stop it from happening again and again? This may manifest in lots of different ways. This could be your team are suffering. It could be that your customers are suffering. It could be that you just don't gel with this person. But whatever it is, this is not a good fit for your business. So what do we do about this? How do we move forward with this? And how do we stop it happening again? There's a few ways of approaching this. Right now, we need to kind of think of this from the perspective of the rest of the team, because this is going to be like poison. Think about when you put a healthy strawberry next to a moldy strawberry. You've all probably seen the Instagram videos, but within a day, 2 days, they're both moldy, and it becomes infectious and poisonous. And this comes down to A players, B players, and C players. And I'm looking at this from the perspective of values fit, but with the values perspective, this is key to making sure we're bringing the right people onto the bus. Really, right people, right seats. In the 90s, the values were a big thing. They were pushed out. I think it was Jim Collins who pushed them out, and it was this new silver bullet. It was this quick fix. There was nothing really tangible as to what to go and do, and then it became this kind of fluff that sat in the background. Thing is, they weren't used correctly. They weren't deployed correctly, and it was about something that lived on the wall, not something that was lived in the hallways. And this is really, really key, that these values that we have are core, not aspirational. The difference is one's for marketing, one's to tell everybody else, and one is for who we are. Now, if we understand these elements, these visceral elements as to what it is that makes us tick, we're able to kind of make sure when we're going through the hiring process and we're bringing these right people on board that we've got a good cultural fit. So if we understand our core values and we build these questions out as part of the hiring process, we can cross-reference these values. Are they the right fit? If they're not, it's fine. It doesn't make them a bad person. It just means that they're not a fit for what you're trying to do. If we've got that bit right, because you'll be able to tell straight away. If you understand these things and you're interviewing somebody, or even if you're having a quick conversation with them as a sift process on the application process, we don't need to go into the competency level. Can they do that? Because the CV should say that. We know what they've done. We know their experience. What we don't know is who they are and how they show up. Are they going to be a fit for our culture, for our world? That is critical, because if they're not, it will become a problem in the business in a very short period of time, where that A player becomes a B player, becomes a C player. And the C players will affect the A players, and they'll become B players and C players. So I was working with a client not too long ago, and we had a problem come up in our weekly tactical, and it was a problem around an engineer who, they weren't following process, they weren't doing it as everybody else does it. They run the late shift, and it's not like they got a lot of tickets. They got about, I don't know, 10 tickets on this late shift, and 3 of them weren't done, and they were spending too much time on these tickets. So when we challenged them about why they were spending too much time on these tickets, they just threw lots of problems, and they didn't really care. And the problem was that it was cascading and rolling over to the next team tomorrow. So then things were outside of SLA, pulled the numbers down, and it becomes this cascading issue. So when we start talking about this in the highlights, I'm like, okay, let's drop this down to the issues, and let's have a discussion around the problem here. This is a symptom. This is not the problem. Problem being, when we drilled down and discussed this, this became a values fit. And this person did not really fit. But we know our values. That company knows their values. They're there for everybody. We measure against them. And when we started having a conversation about the symptom, we then overlaid the values and we scored them 1 to 5. 1 never does it. 5 does it all the time. Dead simple, really easy, subjective, I know, but this is based on our limbic brain, which is our feelings. This is kind of where we get most of our visceral connection with things. And then when we've had a look at this, it became that this person, like very clear that this person isn't, they're like the 2.5 out of 5 values. So when we look at this, what we need to understand is, are they actually sat in the right seat? Have we compounded the fact that they're a B player and they're sat in the wrong seat doing the wrong kind of work that really takes away their energy and pushes them now into the C player role because they've just kind of quiet quitted? So what we've got options to do, and this isn't always viable, is go, well, is it the fact that this person is wrong for the business, or is it now the fact that this person is not necessarily sat in the right seat? Can we use them differently? So if they're in a role, let's use this one as an example, where they're having to just churn through tickets, follow process, and they're not that person who likes the lists and the tasks and things like that, they're probably sat in the wrong seat. It's gonna sap you full of energy. But if they're the kind of person who likes to take an idea or look at a problem and think, is this the right solution that we're working on, that's a different role. Maybe that's more of a project role, professional services role, that we can help them get more involved in a team where they're doing it. So maybe they're just sat in the wrong seat. Paraphrase definition of insanity is always doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So what we need to do is go and do something differently here if we want a different result. So let's view this as, Jim Collins coined this as the bus. So the bus is the business. The seats are the positions in the business, and the people who are sitting on those, guess what, are your employees. They're the team. So when we look at it from the bus perspective, we need to understand our values, how we show up, what our standards are. They're key and they need to be core. Then we need to understand the seats on that bus. The seats, very important, because somebody who sits in a finance position, very different from the kind of person who sits in a technical position. We need to understand the key responsibilities, the key accountabilities, the key competencies. We need to understand all of that to make sure that we're putting the right person in there. And then we need to understand, what kind of work is it? Is it high elevation strategic, or is it low elevation tactical? And then we need to understand that we can take all the steps from 1 and 2 and put them into an advert and really shout at the people in an advert and say, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, this is what you'll be doing, come and sit down with us. We'll have a conversation with you. And that conversation would be way more enjoyable than a conversation that's of somebody who's just looking for another job. Thanks for watching. Let me know how hiring's going for you. Reach out in the comments. Hope this helps.